The $23,000 lie. Why your loyal career is bankrupting you. Picture this. A man spends 9 years at the same desk. 9 years of great job emails. 9 years of holiday parties, performance reviews, and modest little raises that always land somewhere between 2 and 4%. He does the math one Sunday night, alone with a calculator and a cold cup of coffee, and realizes his total salary growth over almost a decade is $23,000. $23,000. That's supposed to feel like progress. It doesn't, because 2 desks over a former coworker who quit after 3 years is now making $33,000 more than him every single year. Same industry, same starting point, opposite outcome. And that gap isn't an accident. It's a system. Let's call our loyal employee Mark and the man who left, Derek. Mark started as a junior analyst at $48,000. Derek started 2 years later at $52,000. Mark stayed. Derek didn't. 3 years in, Derek walked. New company, new title, $78,000. A 50% jump for the crime of simply being willing to leave. 2 years after that, he jumped again. $104,000. Derek has now worked 7 years total, 2 fewer than Mark, and he earns $33,000 more annually than a man who did everything right. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Research on job switching consistently shows that employees who stay put for years at a time end up earning meaningfully less over their careers than those who change employers every few years, sometimes by 20% or more. Companies call it a raise. Economists call it something else, a loyalty tax. And Mark has been paying it every single year without ever seeing the bill. Let's look at what that 3% reward actually buys him. Last year, he made $69,000. This year, after his glowing review, he made $71,200. That's a $2,200 raise. Inflation that same year ran close to 5%, which means Mark didn't get richer. He got poorer, and he was handed a pat on the back for it. Meanwhile, Derek's one job switch netted him a $32,000 jump, 14 times larger than Mark's entire annual raise. 14 years of good performance wouldn't even catch up to what Derek earned in a single afternoon of negotiating with a new employer. That's not a coincidence. That's the entire design. Internal raises exist to do one thing: keep you just satisfied enough that you stop shopping around. External offers exist to do the opposite, to pay you exactly what the market believes you're worth today, not what you agreed to accept 5 years ago out of gratitude for getting hired at all. And it gets worse, much worse, because now a new senior analyst joins Mark's team. 6 years of experience, fresh off the street. Her starting salary? $76,000. $5,000 more than Mark, who has 11 years of combined experience. He finds out over lunch, almost by accident, and confronts his manager. The answer he gets is almost poetic in its cruelty. That's just what the market required to get her to say yes. Translation: the company will pay whatever it takes to hire someone new, but it will pay the bare minimum to keep someone it already owns. Mark isn't undervalued because he's untalented. He's undervalued because he stopped being a threat to leave. So Mark finally does something drastic. He interviews elsewhere. He lands an offer, $92,000, $21,000 more than he currently makes. He walks in and resigns. And suddenly, miraculously, there's money in the budget. His manager scrambles, panics, and offers $82,000 to stay. $11,000, the biggest raise of his entire career, dangled the second he proved he was willing to walk away. He takes it. He feels seen. He feels valued. He is neither of those things. He just proved definitively that the company had $10,000 sitting there the entire time and chose not to give it to him until he threatened to leave. And here's the twist nobody warns you about. Once you accept a counteroffer, you're marked. Quietly, invisibly, your name goes on a list of people who almost left. Promotions slow. Big raises stop. Because now leadership knows exactly how cheap it is to keep you. Just enough to stop the bleeding, never enough to match your real value. Now stretch this out. Mark stays at 71, then 82,000. Derek stays at 104. That $33,000 gap isn't just lost income, it's lost compounding. If Mark had invested that yearly difference at an average 8% return, in just 5 years, he'd be sitting on nearly $200,000 he'll simply never have. Stretch that math across 20, 30 years of a career, and the gap between the loyal employee and the job hopper isn't measured in tens of thousands. It crosses seven figures. And there's a second cost almost nobody talks about. Your resume itself starts working against you. 9 years at one company doesn't read as dedicated to a hiring manager anymore. It reads as stagnant, risk-averse, possibly unhireable elsewhere. Derek's resume, by contrast, 3 companies, rising titles, rising pay, reads like a man companies compete over. The market doesn't just punish loyalty financially. It punishes it reputationally. So why does anyone stay? Comfort, familiarity, the fear that the next job might be worse, that a new manager might be a nightmare, that starting over means risking everything you've built. That fear is completely rational, and it's also exactly what your employer is counting on. Every reassuring sentence your manager says in your annual review, "You're valued here, big things are coming, be patient," is not a lie. It's retention language, engineered to cost the company nothing while costing you tens of thousands of dollars a year in opportunity. If there is one lesson buried in Mark and Derek's diverging paths, it's this. Companies will always pay market rate to recruit you and below market rate to keep you, for as long as you let them. The fix isn't complicated, even if it's uncomfortable. Interview periodically, even when you're happy. Not to leave, but to know your actual worth. If an outside offer beats your current pay by 20% or more, take it. Don't negotiate yourself into staying underpaid at the place that ignored you until you had a foot out the door. And if you do take a counteroffer, understand it's a patch, not a fix. Start looking again within a year, because the incentives that underpaid you haven't changed at all. Mark retired decades later as a director, making $112,000, proud of a slow, steady climb. Derek retired a vice president at $230,000, having changed companies 5 times. Same years worked, over $1 million apart in lifetime earnings. Not because one man worked harder, because one man kept asking the market what he was worth, and the other man simply hoped his employer would tell him the truth.